You're on the gram.
All right. Your alias. Are you using your alias? What's your alias?
No, you
like
can
Chocolate Rain or something.
That sounds like my
I'm me today.
You didn't eat me.
I'm me.
And are you going to come with the real talks?
I am. However, I have to say these views are my own. They don't reflect the BBC or anything to do with anybody else that I represent or work with. Yeah. All of them caveats there. You get me? It's real. It's real out here.
My views represent me. What my bumper clat think?
We haven't even started yet.
I know, innit? But we're rolling, so.
Oh, it's recording.
Yeah, but what about my one ear?
No one cares about your one ear.
Just listen from.
I mean,
you can't not
to be fair, you could take one headphone off and you'd still hear everything.
Bruv,
do I look like I want to do that?
All we need to do, that's literally just about finding your levels. That's all that headphone is for.
Yes, I know.
So if you found your level, you're right.
Okay.
Why he thinks he's so cool? Bro. Look at him, little gang filling.
I know, innit?
Bro, I'm relaxing. The food was filling. Shout out to the chef.
Shout out to Mandela.
Chef Mo.
When I'm full, this is me and like I'm being polite now.
Yeah,
Full at home, I'm completely gone. I'm just like, I'm off.
No one's really listening to you.
So,
Alright, let's get started.
You're sharing, right?
Let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of Chatting Saltfish. This is actually quite different because I'm the only one that you probably are familiar with. I'm joined with still people from South.
Yep.
So we are still Chatting Saltfish. But today I'm joined with, on my left, let's go around the table.
Chef Mo.
I think on my left. For everyone to know, this guy's not on my left. That's why it's like I'm confused.
That took me a while to clock your left still.
Oh,
I know,
wow.
I know.
But we got Chef Mo. He made us a nice little meal. Yeah, man like. And then who else have we got?
Bro, you're not introducing me.
Say your name, man.
Did I not introduce myself?
Oh my gosh, he's such a
Did you introduce yourself?
He's such a queen. He's such a queen. Just say your name.
Okay, yeah. My name's Mansell.
Okay, thank you. And then who else we got?
We got Moses here.
Wow, why do your voice sound like that?
What?
Is that your radio voice?
I mean, it might be, you know. Mike's in front of me. I go into professional mode, innit?
I'm saying we have no banner. Yeah, we got Moses. So why everyone got M's on there except for me?
Yeah, still.
Triple M.
Could it be a thing that our parents did before we were born? It's not a choice.
Sarcastic. Keep on American accent. But yeah. So
that was a shit.
Yeah, it was really bad.
Yeah, no.
But still, this is Chatting Saltfish, and we're going to be the same old Chatting Saltfish, chatting the most brief. So what's been going down in the news? I think we have to say, because this is like, should we start serious? Do we just get serious? Because that was the main thing that's happened.
Can we, I mean, a lot of things have happened in the news. Could we touch on, like, the last 2-3 weeks?
You can, but it determines how relevant it is.
Okay, cool. So,
if you want.
Because you said serious. I'm thinking Shamima Begum.
Oh, that's deep.
Right?
But before we get to that...
You really want to go there?
Yeah, no, I do, because here's the thing.
Wait, can I stop you though, please?
Go.
Before we even get there, should we give a context to all of us and why we're even here?
But while we're here.
Yeah. That's a good idea.
Go on then.
Good idea, yeah.
Alright, so...
radio, man.
No, I'm just, Alright, so this is Andrew's podcast. And
it's not my podcast.
Okay, this is Chatty and Saltfish.
It's not my podcast. It's also Ash and Dein.
Alright.
Yeah, shout out to man.
So we know about this podcast via Andrew, who we also all went to secondary school with and have kept in contact with over the years. And Andrew has recently been blessed to get his own property. I'm not going to bait up your postcode or where you are. And we've been bugging him to come over and hang out and do the podcast.
Only for a few weeks.
It was a proper uphill struggle, isn't it?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, yeah, I'm not in.
I remember comments about fumigating.
I haven't decorated the house.
You know what I'm saying?
These are all things about. These are all the truthful things, and this is also the fact. Is the matter is, I just don't like hosting. I'm an introvert. I'd like to be in my little
introvert
space
with a podcast.
But you did good today. We don't
need to talk about that.
Exactly. You stay there.
Yeah, I like to be in my little bubble. Protect my little bubble.
But yeah, that's
why we're here.
That's why we're here.
That's why we're here today. And I thought it would be a great time to grab an episode because everyone's still from South, so it's still chatting Saltfish things. You got your context.
Yeah.
Now.
Context is great.
Yeah. Now,
So back to Shamima.
Yeah. Now, Mr. Serious. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was thinking Shamima Begum. This is one of the girls that fled the UK and went to Syria to become an ISIS bride. Requested asylum or at least British intervention from a refugee camp to come back into the UK with her poorly son.
Didn't she also get her thing stripped? Her British citizenship?
British citizenship was stripped from her. And the reason behind that was because her parents are Bangladeshi heritage, which automatically makes her in line for Bangladeshi citizenship. However, Bangladesh made an outward statement to say that she is not a citizen of Bangladesh, and therefore she potentially was unlawfully removed her actual birthright, her British citizenship. And the thing is, the Constitution does state that you cannot make someone stateless.
Yeah.
So that's a real state of affairs.
Like, so where do you stand in terms of with her, basically? Because in terms of what she's done and stuff, so you see why.
The thing. The crimes that she committed are actually crimes that were committed against herself, because also looking at the British judiciary system, she was 15, so she was underage when she committed those crimes, and therefore it potentially, this is not my standpoint, but I'm just saying sort of the legalities of things. The UK has got every right to sort of try her and her crimes in Britain, and that it will be against her rather than crimes that she committed herself had she committed them a few years later as an adult. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah. Me, but I don't know. But for me, I personally, I can see why you would want her to come back though, because of what she's gone to do and things. Like, she's not remorseful or anything for her actions. That's the idea. And for me, if you are basically against the country, like I'm not even like 100% like fully like singing the national anthem or anything. But when it comes to that, there's some things like you don't do against your country and expect, oh, I don't like it here now. Can I come back? This is what I'm thinking. Like you kind of lost that privilege when you went out there.
So what you'll find is I've literally just stated the legalities of things so far. I've not said where I stand, whether she should come or she shouldn't come.
So why do you say where you stand?
I'm saying no. I will get there. I just wanted to put it out there because actually where we are now is that weeks later, Shamima's son has died. He died of pneumonia, and the question now stands. As I said, she had every right to be a British citizen. The crimes she committed, she was under 15. She was 15 and under. She was not an adult, so therefore, the state had a duty of care towards her to a certain extent. Now, where I do stand, I do feel like if you remove yourself from a country that you belong to, a group of people that you belong to join forces with an ideology that is against where you actually come from, then in a way you have denounced your rights to that land and to that place. Yeah?
This is your personal opinion.
These are now my personal views. And while I think it's really sad that she lost her son, I do feel like the UK had every right towards that child to take that child and put that child into better care. But it doesn't change that as tough as the repercussions are, this has come to pass or come to being based on choices that she made when she left the United Kingdom to go to Turkey and to flee to go into Syria at that point in time. I do believe, these are my views, had she shown a level of remorse, then yeah, maybe there was a conversation that was worth having. I do feel like someone like Shamima Begum is a threat.
I think that's where that exactly. I think
She
that
is-
same
she
thing
is-
with the
she
remorse.
is a threat.
I
She
think
is
the
a
lack
threat.
of remorse.
She is a threat because who is to know? Who is to know if she is not on her own being, on her own on an assignment to come back into the country and to fulfill certain things under the agenda for ISIS? Who is to know? So therefore, I do understand why they said no. I do understand why even people like I personally don't think she should be here. You know. However, things were done and said that go against legislation. That is also a fact.
I think she should be here.
You think she should be here?
Definitely.
Wow.
Why do you think that?
Because for the first question, can anyone tell me what her actual crimes were?
Yes.
What?
Mm-hmm.
So when she went to Syria
Mm-hmm.
and joined ISIS, ISIL, Daesh, whatever you want to call them, it was the crime is the complicity in the atrocities that they did.
That's
So
a crime.
that is a crime.
Yeah.
That's a crime.
Even
Absolutely.
in this country, if I know that you are a criminal
Yeah.
and I know your criminal
As in
activities,
conspiracy.
wait, and I know where you're going,
Yeah.
and I know what you're going to do,
Yeah.
I'm committing a crime.
Yeah, but the issue. Oh, sorry, go on. Maybe
So-
I'm finished.
Yeah. So even with people who didn't go to join Daesh
Yeah.
in Syria and actually went to Syria and Iraq to fight Daesh,
Yeah.
who joined the Kurdish militias that were there,
Yeah.
they were liable to prosecution if they came back to the UK. In other words, people that went to fight on the side that we supported
Yeah.
were still liable to prosecution.
Yeah.
And that tells you that there's a whole load of skepticism and association by geography. So for somebody who has admitted to joining
Yeah.
Daesh,
Yeah.
she would be culpable for any crimes that were committed.
Cool. But the thing I don't get is like, can you, to do that, don't you have to go for a trial? There's a whole due process for that.
So that's really good
That's what's
because
interesting.
then we're getting to my opinion.
Yeah, because I'm like, cool. A lot of the rhetoric I've seen online is her crimes. I'm like, there wasn't much said on what she actually did, and I'm like, to be honest, I'm mad into crime dramas and just crime, just what's going on, just psychology of criminals and all of that psychology and what's going on. But I'm like, it's interesting because we're technically now, this case I think is bigger than her.
Absolutely, yes.
I feel like I don't support ISIS or any of that, or if she did
You
it,
don't want
yeah,
to
you
put
get
that
me.
out there.
Like to me, it's not even about Shamima, because or
Shamima.
Shamima. Sorry, see, that's how much I'm not that interested in her, the person. But I think like essentially why I think it's dangerous because now we're arriving at a point where you can be prosecuted without due process and a trial and an allegation, essentially. Do you get me? Whereas like what we were just discussing even before the mic's on, where someone makes an allegation on someone, you know, it's just in this situation, obviously it's a bit extreme, it's IS. It's not like an attack or an assault or anything like that. It's a different thing. Essentially you're going against the state. It's not treason because we don't have that treason law, but it's seen as treason, you get me?
So-
However, what I think is more dangerous and what I think essentially it sets a precedent because for those of us that ain't British, essentially it says if you mess up, we're gonna send you back to somewhere you've never been.
So,
No, but the only problem,
Hold on,
problem,
hold on.
no, but I just have an issue with that. The fact is, it is the threat aspect. It's like because like Mandela said, she
Yeah.
is a threat, and it's the fact there's no remorse.
Hang on.
If you remorseful for your actions, then
Yeah.
there's every right to say, you know what, you can change. But the fact that you're actually still saying, you know what, I did what I did,
I would
let me
address-
back in,
can
because I don't
I
like
would-
it.
You know what the issue is? You know
I
what the
would
issue
like
is?
to-
address that?
I said that I don't think
Yeah.
I don't want her here
Yeah.
because I personally consider her to be a threat.
Yeah.
I don't want her here because I consider her to be a threat. However, I am not the judiciary. The judiciary had every right. They had no right to make her stateless. I don't regret that. They did that. But in all honesty, they should have followed procedures.
Yeah.
You know, and actually, based on the fact that she did what she did, she went in February 2015 and she was 15 years old. She was a child when she went there. You know, she was groomed. she saw it fit to go there because there was a sensational idea about what was going to happen when she goes to become an Islamic bride. She said that she had recently just become more religious, and she was technically raped when she was there. If we follow British law, she had her first child when she was still underage. These are real facts. And actually, when she should have been given the opportunity to come back, to be assessed psychologically, to be tried in a way, but not tried as an for having done a crime sort of as an adult, but just to have a process of understanding why she did what she did, why did she go there, what attracted her to go there. Because actually, what we need to do is capture the rest of the children in this world. We need to capture the rest of the children in the country who would see a level of interest in going somewhere like Syria and joining the caliphate. Do you get what I'm saying?
So yeah,
I personally do not think that she should come back. I personally think she should stay where she is because I personally find her to be a threat. But I don't think that the judiciary system should not.
But then that's contradictory, though, isn't it?
It is contradictory, but it's okay.
Why?
The reason why it's okay for me, because I am not the law. I'm not the lawmakers. If the lawmakers follow the law, then that's that. I'm saying I don't want her back. That's my personal opinion.
No, but
I don't want her here.
That doesn't answer the question.
But
Sorry,
you know what it is?
something.
Yeah. You know what it is? We're asking the wrong question.
Yeah, that's true.
Because we are asking, should she be allowed back?
And I think yes.
When really what we should be asking is, has she committed a crime? Now, if you look at we talk about ideologies, which is really good because one of the biggest ideologies in the world is Marxism. Marxism talks about a division of labor, and that division of labor essentially states that men are the main workforce and women act as a reserve army of labor. So that comes in times, for example, where most men are not able to take part in their normal occupation. Women come in and fill the workforce, which was done in this country, for example, during the Second World War. So if we take that example of a division of labor and we ask the actual question, not is she a threat, but has she committed a crime? Then yes, she has committed a crime. She has. Because she was complicit and aided fighters who were actively fighting against Bashar al-Assad in Syria. So in that sense, she has committed a crime. Now, the question then is, should she be allowed back? I'm of the viewpoint, no, because she's committed a crime. So we talk about judicial processes. She should undergo judicial process.
Indeed.
It shouldn't be British judicial process. Because she's committed the crimes in Syria. She was first in Raqqa, which was the de facto capital.
But isn't that contradictory too?
Yes. Because
I love that's what's out here doing.
Yes.
Yeah. It is contradictory.
You're right. I am contradictory.
When she was in but it's not contradictory from my standpoint.
It's not from me. Exactly.
It's contradictory from a British higher level standpoint. Because the crime she committed.
But I think even that is sorry.
Well, no, it isn't because Moses is so understanding.
No, because it's like his opinion is informed partly by himself and the legal process, and by him saying he doesn't think she should be back based on she committed a crime is based on the British judges. You see what I mean? It's like
no. Because
her crime is based on part in Syria, but also what you explained to me, how she's complicit in all of this, is by our legal standard. So if we can use the legal standard to persecute her, but we can't use it to technically give her rights, which she's actually under the same system allowed. That's why I'm like,
this is the beauty of it.
God,
this is the beauty of it.
Because I want to hear man sort of like, yes.
Because working within the national context where she was in Raqqa and then she was in Baghouz, which are both in that region. She's committed a crime in Syrian law. Okay. So my opinion is she should be tried under Syrian law. But this is the beauty of it. This country does not have an official relationship with Al-Assad.
There you go.
So you can't even facilitate the judicial process which she should have undergone, because the British from the very, 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 very outset were so anti-Assad for geopolitical reasons that they can't facilitate that trial, which is what they should be doing, because she actually committed a crime there. Yeah?
Yeah.
So, and she didn't just commit the crime when she was 15, she committed it up until she was a woman by, let's say, legal standards here. So she should be tried there. She can't be tried there. Why? Because our government doesn't have a relationship with that government. And that's the question you should be asking. Why doesn't our government have a relationship with that government?
Because they're Babylon.
Because they're exactly. Yes.
But then hang on. The thing what gets me is like, I agree with all of that. And that's why I'm like, it's such a chasing your tail argument, because I'm like, you said she's a threat. I'm like, well, fair play. If she's a threat, potentially try her, let go. Because my thing is interesting. When you check a lot of psychology behind criminals, it's really interesting. The minute you put a Muslim face or IS behind it, people are just so anti. But 30 years ago when the IRA was bombing up the world, it was like, well, it's patriotism, it's this and that. I'm like, hang on a second, wait. So you want to go through all the, and we can get onto the New Zealand thing as well.
But the comparison, it's an ill comparison though.
We're going to get onto that.
The IRA is totally different to ISIL, because...
But what I'm talking about, the comparison of someone that can be radicalised.
Okay.
Do you get me? Like somebody in the Republic or the Northern Ireland can be radicalised and go join...
Sure,
That's what I'm saying. Not in the sense of their ideology. I'm talking about the process of someone young can go join this faction, pick up a rifle and cause a crime against a state, which they did. Bombs were going on all over.
Yeah.
They still are. They were finding bombs just the other day. That the IRA were just like, they're ours. Do you get me? So my issue is, okay, you want to turn a blind eye when it's not a Muslim or a brown face. But my thing is, when you talk about her being a threat and all of this, I'm like, she is British. And I think what this represents is so much more dangerous. And I think if she is a threat, let her undergo the proper psychoanalysis that it should require. Because when you go through a lot of people that have suffered traumas, people are like, she didn't show remorse. Like, listen, if I've seen people get beheaded and stuff like this, do you think I'm going to have a normal reaction to most things? Do you get me?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not trying to say... Ultimately, what I'm saying is, I don't think we should put the same reaction on everyone. We can't sit there and expect someone to give the scripted media interview we want to see. Oh, I'm sorry, I really... Because she could equally be the devil in disguise and put that on. So I'm like, no, let someone who actually knows what they're doing psychoanalyze her. Then... If she's guilty, dash her in jail. Then you can watch her all you want. Do you know what I mean?
This is the beauty of it.
This is the reason why I have said that and I admit my opinion is probably very lazy. It means that work isn't done.
Normally that's me, isn't it?
Yeah.
No, it's the truth. I personally do not want her here, but I feel that she at least began committing her crimes as a 15-year-old girl who was radicalized. And that is the truth. It's important that we understand why she was attracted to Islamic State.
And I've got,
Why did she think that this was the right thing to do? We need to understand the kind of family that this girl is coming from. Because it's, just looking on the side of things, we have a lot of problems with gang culture here. And a lot of the issues, in my opinion, start off in the family.
I agree.
Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
So we need to understand Shamima Begum's psychology for us to be able to help the other girls who are 15 and under, who are being radicalized, who are seeing these sensational views of a religious group that is coming together.
But how can you stop that when all the grooming and stuff is just online?
But you know what it is?
But the grooming is not just
it's more complicated than what we were saying.
It's beyond just being online. It's the fact that there are groups. There are underground groups. As much as people are trying to tackle it, it's a real thing. So actually, I feel that we had every duty to bring Shamima back. We had every duty to give her child a fair chance to treatment.
But on the idea of grooming, though, with think of like a family can only do so much. But if someone was to target a child, for instance, they're still at an age of influence. They can be influenced easily. So if someone grooms them with the right thing... So
are we saying that Shamima has been groomed? She did it.
I mean, everyone that kind of gets picked up from Britain and they end up going over there, surely they've been groomed at some point, no?
You know what it is?
They didn't make that decision just freely without someone telling them.
They've been radicalised, and that's the point. So actually...
Radicalisation is different than grooming, though.
And I want to say that because...
But here's the thing. Shamima Begum both has happened to her.
Yeah.
She was radicalized.
But I'm just making that
She was,
statement.
yeah,
It's not
of course,
the same
yeah.
thing.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Do they
She
go
was
hand in hand?
radicalized. Yeah.
No, not necessarily.
Absolutely. You know, she said that she was becoming more and more religious, and obviously, from a religious standpoint, there was a lot of underpinning sort of rhetoric that was coming from the Quran that made her believe that actually some of these things and this war is a holy war, and therefore it's okay. That's one part. And then in another part, she was actually groomed. She went actively knowing that she's going to become an Islamic bride. She didn't know what she was going to see. She didn't know the atrocities that she was going to be through. And actually, there's a lot of trauma that Shamima has gone through. That's the truth. So actually, it is contradictory and it is lazy. I personally thought, no, I don't need this. And this standpoint, look, I feel like becoming a parent, I don't want anything that can shake, you know, the spheres that are there and the bubbles that I'm trying to create.
Yeah.
For my family, for myself, for those that I love, for even you guys, my friend units and all of that stuff. So it's lazy, but actually there was every right for Shamima to be brought back and tried and psychoanalyzed, and for her child to get treatment.
Why should she, when the crimes she did were on that soil, and most British citizens
Because
who commit
she
crimes
is-
abroad, they're tried, prosecuted, and even jailed in those countries? Surely that is what should happen to her. She's done exactly the same thing.
Absolutely, but what about her child?
But the child is different. The child is different.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
there's even a question, in my opinion, about the term radicalized. Now, Andrew mentioned the distinction between radicalization and grooming.
No, Moses did.
Oh, Moses did. Beg your pardon. What if this is what I believe, and I've got good reasons to believe this. I don't even believe she was radicalized in the sense of what people say.
Okay. Elaborate. Why is that?
Yeah. So, because to be radicalized, if you look at Islam as a religion and you look at the radicals that have come before,
Yeah.
the radicals that have come before, often they have a level of knowledge about Islamic history, Islamic concepts, Islamic jurisprudence, Islamic values on taxation, on interest, on XYZ, on how you dress. Shamima Begum doesn't know any of this stuff.
No.
If you ask Shamima Begum to describe the concept of jihad, which is so often used and mentioned today, she wouldn't be able to tell you what jihad is. In the same way that most of the British public would not be able to tell you what jihad is. If you ask Shamima Begum, has she even done the pilgrimage to Mecca, she wouldn't be even able to tell you that. So, first of all, she's not much of a Muslim, but she's not much of a radical. She's not much of a radical. No. She's not much of a radical.
No,
now,
he is Muslim, by the way. So,
just to clarify, yeah.
so
She didn't just come out with that.
we don't want chatty and salt wish to be taken.
no, and everything
These
is
are not the view of Chinese audience.
everything is my own view. Everything is my own view. Yeah.
Yeah, no, for real.
But
That's gonna be the snippet
no, but
or the name of the title.
She's not even a Muslim.
no, she's not.
We got
And
a
you know
title
what?
for the we got a title for the episode.
It's a big deal. It's a big deal for any
absolutely.
Muslim to say that another person is not a Muslim. There's a saying in Islam. It comes from, I think, a hadith, which is a saying of the Prophet Muhammad, that if you see a Muslim who's drenched in alcohol, you should believe he had that alcohol poured all over him quicker than you should believe he drank it. So to call
That's
Shamima
naive.
Begum, huh?
Is that not a naive?
No,
No,
it's
the belief is that
assumption
he's not
that
going to drink. Yeah.
you shouldn't call somebody.
Yeah.
You shouldn't say somebody is not a Muslim. It's one of the worst things you could do. But what I mean by that is, she has no Islamic knowledge.
Yeah.
So for her to be radicalized in association with the idea of Islam or radical Islam, which I even have a problem with that term, doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I agree.
Her motivation for going out there was to get married. Now,
I look man. She a look man.
exactly, man.
Exactly.
Exactly. But you're getting me. Her crutches were on fire. Bruv. So what am I saying to you? No, I'm sorry, but they were. So what am I saying? I'll give you another example. I'll give you another example, yeah? I'll give you another example. I was reading in the Guardian newspaper at the time about another girl. She was a US citizen.
Yes.
Her name was Huda Muthana or something like that. She went there and she married, in the space of 4 years, 3 men. 3 men, they were all fighters with
together?
Daesh. No. One after the other, they were all killed. She married 3 men. Who do you know in that time would marry 3 men?
She's busy.
So exactly.
Thing,
So the hormones, it's a
It's a
hormone.
hormonal thing.
Exactly. And I'm not saying, but this is the thing. So I believe that was as much to do with hormones as it was to do with actually Islam or radicalization.
Is it actually to do with hormones though, or is it a thing
No,
where
no,
it's more of a possession thing? Are they in fully control of it?
2 questions though.
Yes. Go.
So then, I completely agree with you, the radicalization thing, and it's interesting because I've never sort of thought about it like that. I'm not that knowledgeable on Islam, so it's like it's good. So then, do you believe she was groomed? Is my first question, and then second question is,
In parts,
should we
yes.
then not have more? I mean, I'm not saying the British public is suddenly going to adopt this view, but I'm with you.
No, but it's
Like,
a true thing.
Yeah, I agree with
It's
you.
a true
Completely.
thing.
But then it's like that's why I'm so, I guess, passionate about it because I'm like, guys. Yes, she left at 15. Think of what you were doing at 15. Do you get me? Like, people are trying to, like, she's some big 49-year-old man that's the Yorkshire Ripper or something. I'm like, guys,
The thing is,
15.
and I would like to say, I would like to pull up her educational records. I think she's actually quite low. Like,
Well, we won't know
IQ.
because
No, but I
that's not a
genuinely-
due
Hold
process.
on. No, because the thing is, even if you kind of listen to what she had to say, she couldn't really form.
No, she couldn't really form a proper,
sentences
a cohesive
or-
argument for anything.
She couldn't really so actually, when
She
she
left
was
at
pulled out
15.
of school, it's very evident that
Yeah.
maybe she wasn't part of the more intellectual or more academic groups. So actually, we need to see Shamima as more of a vulnerable person than we can assume, because when you are that. When you have such an educational deficit, and you do have these hormones that are going on, we've all been teenagers. It's a real
No,
thing.
but this is the thing.
Oh, please, let me land.
Wow.
That was dismissed.
No.
Apparently, it's a man with podcast.
Yeah, I think so.
Don't worry. All right. No. Like, let's really think about it like this.
Let me land.
When you have such an educational deficit, you are quite vulnerable. And you do have these hormones. Actually, I feel like maybe the UK needs to be a little bit more compassionate about Shamima Begum as the child that left the United Kingdom rather than the adult woman that she is today. Because it's very clear to see she didn't go there and seek further educational endeavours.
No, she didn't.
She got a husband, got children, witnessed brutal murders, watched beheadings, lost 3 children now.
Exactly. 3 children. Doesn't that tell you she was busy?
You know.
So this is part of my point.
But on the busy thing.
But yeah, I mean, come on now. 3 children. So she was busy, and that's what her goal was. But you know what the other thing was?
Children, 15, 19 she's now?
She 19?
No, what we need to think about is what are her rights as a woman in that kind of area. Guys, like, there are deeper things to actually look at. and to think about.
definitely.
We can say that she was busy, but
This is what I was thinking. How much control did she have?
who's to
in
say
the
that she
situation?
was consenting each and every time?
This is
We
why
know
I-
that she went there voluntarily, but who's to say that as a wife
But hang on,
she
hang on.
had
Yeah.
signed
This is
up
why
to
it's
what she
contradictory. Though.
endured?
This is why I'm saying you're contradicting
I
yourself.
said I was contradicting myself.
Yeah, I know, but I have to
don't
make it
want her
clear.
here.
Yeah,
No, I
no,
don't.
but that's contradictory.
I don't
Yeah.
want her
No, but
here.
okay,
I
no,
don't
wait,
want
wait,
her
wait,
here.
no, wait,
But
wait.
actually,
Wait,
in
no.
all honesty, if we are to reflect, she should be given the judicial procedures
No, but this
that
is what I'm
are
saying.
that are relevant to her. Because actually, we can capture so much more people who are being radicalized, who are being sensationalized. It is important. As I said, my view, I know it is contradictory and I know it's lazy. So actually, there's work to be done. And
But
that's
for
a
me,
fact.
I just personally, for me, it's just again going back to the remorse. It's the fact that it's just not having remorse for your actions. You could make the mistakes because you're 15. Yeah, we all know like that's terrible. You could make those mistakes, and we could, but if you actually show some kind of growth afterwards, but then it's a completely different story. Then we can change our tune and be like, yeah, you should let her back because she knows she was immature or whatever. She was grew and radicalized, but she's now seen a light in a way. But now she's not showing any kind of remorse. So what's to say that when she comes back here, she's not going to continue to maybe groom or influence other young women?
Do you watch? Oh, sorry, we're going to say something.
That's what I'm thinking.
Do you watch 24 Hours in Police Custody?
No, I haven't.
There was this episode recently where this, I think he was like 15 actually, 15-year-old kid in, I think, where are they? Bedford, I think, like attempted to rape this Polish woman, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when they got him in the police interview room, he was basically like that. He was laughing at stuff. He was just looking elsewhere. And the police were just like, "Are you finding this funny? Are you bored? I'm sorry, I'm bored." Like proper antagonizing. 15, right?
Okay.
But what later transpired is like he had mild autism and learning difficulties.
Okay.
So my issue is, I'm like, people like to project what they want to see in this case. Why doesn't she show more remorse? Which to me is a bit weirdly like, I don't know, it's almost like that colonial thing. You bow and act like you're sorry. I'm like, hang on a second, don't tell her how to respond. 1, 2, you don't know what's going on in her head. That's what I mean. It's like if she has the actual process, imagine like all the trauma that's there. Like you can't expect her to act rationally. So I think it's unfair to kind of even. I'm not saying she's done it well,
but this is what I'm saying.
Standards.
The fear is what the fear is. In her case, it was like she did that, and then she comes back, and then I'm just thinking, and then more women are influenced, so they think, oh, if I go out there and I can come back, and then she can influence more. They see her as a role model for what.
Arguably, I think that would. Sorry, man. What last point? Arguably, I think the reverse is more dangerous.
People will see how.
I think she'll become more of a martyr. She's not let in, and it will have more of
people
a
to
draw.
to go.
But that's my opinion.
Okay.
You know what the thing is? There's several things to this. First of all, about what I said before, my idea wasn't that if you know more about Islam, you are automatically more radical. That's not true. Yeah, I want to make that clear. But she doesn't need to come back here, as Moses says, to influence people. My point is about what motivated her was largely based on something sexual, I believe, which was to find a husband. She even said in her interview, I wouldn't have found a man like my husband here. What does that mean?
Do you ever feel like she could have been, then again, the grooming? Do you ever think that the grooming takes a part in that though?
A man like my husband here. So first of all, her husband was fighting for something. Do you know what I mean?
He was fighting for
that's
fighting for dirt, but
fair enough.
he was fighting for dirt. But you see, even what the husband said, we have to ask ourselves what the husband said. I watched the interview with the husband. He said, I wasn't even really that interested in getting married. But one of the seniors in Daesh said to me, look, there's this girl here, she's just come here. And I said, I deliberated about it, and then I thought, well, why not? She wanted to get married. That agency there tells you something.
Okay, so for
that she
him,
was a lot.
For him, she was an aid to masturbation, and for her, it was.
I didn't want to go that graphic, but
it is what it is.
It's a warm
yeah, okay, yeah.
You can say what you
It's a warm hole. That's what. Like if he didn't want to get married, but
A warm hole.
yes,
And you thought I was bad with the crutches coming earlier. Jesus.
You the Mandela.
I just think that there's a few points in this in this country. 15 and 16 are different for girls. They are different, and that's clear. And I hold a standard that, first of all, 16, 15, whatever, you're in your teens, that's you, stay far away from me, But in the real scheme of things, 16 and 15 can be a blurred line in real terms. We have to be honest.
Okay.
And there are some girls, if you see them out on the street, you don't even know what age they are.
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying? And you just have to ask...
You have to wait for the Oyster card to
2 weeks is a problem.
Yeah.
More than 1 week is a problem.
So this idea that she was just groomed,
Yeah.
I don't necessarily even... The agency was there on her part. Remember, the agency was there on her part, so much so that she didn't even travel on her own passport. So we have to ask ourselves the question, did she have no agency? She had enough agency that I wouldn't even say she was groomed. I would say she was maybe implicitly...
How old was her husband?
Older.
No, but how old? Like, considerably? Like,
No, he looks pretty young. We don't
know that information.
He looks bald. I've seen him.
No, but I'm saying, did
No,
they
I-
actually tell us his actual age?
I think it must be publicised somewhere, yeah. But I don't have that information to
Cool.
hand.
Well,
Maybe
I'm
one of you
thinking-
man can Google it.
Come to
And-
think of the age would make a big difference in terms of if it is actually a grooming situation. I feel like.
Yeah, but then
I
the
don't
thing
think
is,
she was groomed by her husband.
he wasn't even.
This
No,
is the thing.
he never
Guys,
met her.
no,
He
this
never
is the
met
thing.
her until
you
he
need
married
to
her.
understand that Shamima Begum was groomed by the idea of the Islamic State, of joining the caliphate. Do you get what
But
I'm
who?
saying?
Do we
But you
know
see,
who?
I don't agree with that because
No,
I don't believe that she was groomed on a purely religious basis. I believe it was a lot to do
the
with
lions, man.
No,
sexual
I think you
frustration,
say that because
and
you're
then
a Muslim.
and then Islam was
I
the
think
cherry
you'd
on
say
the
that
top.
because you're a Muslim, because then you'd feel like it's almost like
That's really interesting, actually.
no, it is. It is.
It is.
I think it might come across to you that, okay, if we're saying that it's a religious thing, that we're talking about the true essence of Islam.
Not at all.
But then,
Not at
yeah,
all.
absolutely not. But because it is a part in which a group have driven a sort of idea of what would happen. Let's be honest. It's like the reason why Jamaicans came into this country in the first place, when there was all of this stuff that was being sang, come and join Great Britain with this and that, and they came here in their numbers. There's a way of advertising something and making it seem attractive that people will actually have an interest in it.
I've got a good answer for you. Yeah.
No, come at me. This is the reason why I'm saying. Could it be because you're Muslim that you find it difficult to understand that actually there's a group under Islamic practice, or whether it's rightfully or wrongfully, but under Islamic practice, who have invited young people, males and females. It's not just girls that went there. Young men went there to go and fight
So this is
in
it.
this holy war.
I'm so glad that
You
I'm
know.
talking to a chef
Yeah.
because you know very well that you can cook an egg many ways. And this is what radicalization is. There's not one clear route to being a radical. And you know me, you know that in terms of religiosity, I'm not someone who's deep in the game, so to speak. So this isn't a case of I've got to defend Islam or anything like that. I'll call it as I see it. But for me, as you say, men and women went there. Now, the path to radicalization is different for everybody. Yeah, in the Salman Rushdie period in this country, the path to radicalization was very different than it is today. Yeah, that we didn't have, for example, the internet and global media and stuff. So when men were recruited to go out there, I do believe that they were taught half truths on certain Islamic concepts. And so in that sense, I do think that this is a problem associated with Islam as a religion. And there are discussions we can have about that, about strands of Islam such as Wahhabism, which is the strand that is associated to ISIS and groups such as this. But the path for women is different. You don't talk about going there and fighting as part of the wider Muslim community and defeating the dogs that are Assad and the Shias in Iran and all this. You go there, as a woman, you go there, you're lured by domestic issues. Go there and be a wife to a mujahid, to a soldier, and that is enough. But it's done through a domestication.
Yeah.
It's not done in the same way as males, where you go there and you are a mujahid and you go there and you do this and you do that.
You're going to
So
the front line.
when you give that domestic lure,
That's what I'm with you,
she's
man.
already got
That's why
got
I'm
it
with you.
here.
I'm completely with you, and I think where I am now, I'm like, I completely agree. She should be tried in Syria, but as you said, that is the beautiful thing. Why can't no one's that question? That's not even ever been interjected into the conversation.
So
because
I'm
they
gonna
can't.
I'm gonna come back because we need to wrap this up for this topic.
Ah,
This
sure,
is
sure,
really
sure,
long.
sure, yeah.
But yeah, so to bring that back to to question, to sum up basically, are we saying I don't know, or we can go around because I don't know if opinions have changed, but are you saying that are you saying that they're right to not let her back then?
I
is that
don't
what we
think
so?
I don't think she should be
Basically.
let back. I think it's unfortunate that she had a child. I think that child is a British citizen and that child should have been let back. I don't believe she should have been let back with that child. Ultimately, what I believe is something that you this government can't do because they cut their nose off to spite their face. And that was that she should be tried under Syrian law by the Syrian government, and whatever happens to her, happens to her. Remember, if she goes there in prison for 10 years, and then they say, well, you have to have her back, she's a British citizen, there would be a different mood. But she's not gone through that process in Syria, so we feel this animosity. If that happened, we would feel different because we'd say, well, she did her time there, now we have to take her back, rah, rah, rah. But that hasn't happened. I don't believe she should come back. That's what I believe should happen.
All right, Mandela.
I think that the British government should have brought her back, or at least her child, and given the child adequate care. Contradictory or not, I still don't want her ass here. Fuck that.
Alright, Moses, what are you saying?
No, I'm with Mansour. I think the best first option would be Syrian government try her. Clearly, that's not an option. So I think the second best thing was, I believe, her to return and be tried here, if proven and pass psychoanalytic tests and all of that due process. But no, I think it sets a worse precedent for people like us, particularly people of colour. You know, especially now with what's going on in the gang and knife crime. You know, next you're gonna see young boys stabbing someone and getting deported back to Jamaica, Nigeria when they're British citizens. And I think the case was much bigger than her. So yeah.
Okay. In that segue, I'm just saying we also touched on about another terrorist incident.
Yes.
Another terrorist incident.
New Zealand. And
we're saying how a certain person kind of framed in the situation.
The backpack murder. What was it? Backpacker.
There was an article written in the Daily Mail with the headline.
The Cocosity.
The Daily Mail. Yeah.
Let me pull this up. Here's so there had something happened during his travels. That's the quote on it. The boy who turned into a Muslim-hating mass killer and murdered 49 in New Zealand after his dad died of cancer, and
what the fuck do you need to talk about the cancer for?
And he left Australia to travel the world, including North Korea and Pakistan. That's the headline.
He went to North Korea.
Yeah.
How sorry?
I don't know.
He just opened it up. Like, what?
Yeah, it's true. But you know, you can.
Something happened.
That's extra.
Do
you know what I mean? Like, how did he get to North Korea?
To be honest,
the boy who turned to a Muslim killer.
There is so many calls for sympathy within. It's entrenched in the way that it's written. You know, we're talking about how he couldn't potentially have issues of his own. Something had to happen while he was in North Korea, and where else?
Pakistan.
And Pakistan. So ideally, we're saying that Pakistan did it.
Why did he go to Pakistan?
Why did he go to North Korea? Like,
bro, I think that's a bigger question.
That's a bigger question.
I think it's harder to go there.
It wasn't open till recently. That's what I'm saying. When did he go?
Yeah, it's true.
But yeah, sorry, as you're saying, Madela, like, I know you got a lot on this one.
I think it's nonsense. The way that it's written in itself is already trying to sympathize with his situation, and actually, I am fed up.
There's this idea.
I'm fed up of white writers always talking about, you know, white males or females who've committed a crime in a way that is that requires sympathy, and yet if it's a person of color, if it's a Muslim,
the biggest problem is the idea is that it's always there's a certain skin shade that's his mental illness, and there's a certain skin shade that's terrorism.
Yeah, it's terrorism. He's a terrorist. And I'm glad that the New Zealand Prime Minister made that very clear. She made that statement and made it very clear. Get to your point. I want to give you guys what one of the senators in New Zealand said. It's shocking.
Yeah.
But that statement in itself is entrenched with a lot of.
The man that got egged.
Yeah.
What is that?
That man that got egged in the back of the head. Huh?
He can punch up.
Yeah. I think he's from the streets.
Yeah.
Two left hooks.
I think he's from the streets. Yeah, he's just from the streets.
Even the strong guy.
The egg licked him. He started swinging bangs like he.
Yeah.
He's making connections as well.
While he was in the press conference, he gave him 2 left hooks.
That
bro.
guy, he was throwing blows as if he was from the project.
Like, I'm 15, 16, running kids at you.
On site. Like, it was literally egg. He turned around.
Well, he did a few swings.
Yeah. He just was like sort of bang bang.
Bro,
Yeah.
they both connected.
It's true. You know what it reminds me of back in school when you used to be ramping with the other students. Clap somebody. That's what it was like.
Wait, what was it?
But you know what? No, you know what it reminded me of, which a lot of people might not remember. John Prescott getting egged.
Yes.
Yeah, and he actually left hooked in
Yes.
bro.
And I mentioned that the other night. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's a funny one.
Who's it? No, the New Zealand Prime Minister.
I think it's the Australian senator.
He was an Australian senator.
He's a senator. Anyway.
Yeah, while you keep talking, I'm gonna find it.
He got egged in the back of the head dirty.
I am fed up. I'm over it. I am tired that we don't look to young black, Hispanic, Indian, just brown criminals are savages, terrorists. You know, they are likened to animals, and yet when it's a Caucasian, you know, something happened, and there's something about their mental health, you know, status, whether it's autism or whether it's, you know, voices that were in their head due to schizophrenia or whatever. There's always a reason behind, you know, whites when they do something. But when it's someone of color, it's barbaric and it's almost intrinsic. You know, they're deemed to be animalistic. They're terrorists. Well, what about their mental health? What about all the other things? Like,
what about Shamima's?
Huh?
We're going
That's
back.
what I'm saying. Sorry, but yeah.
No. That's cool.
And what about her mental health? That's what I'm saying. Like, why did they ever bring that into But
and that
on your point.
that definitely should be looked into because you know, there's a lot of desensitization that she went through, and actually that's one of the key ingredients in indoctrinating or radicalizing someone. So the person who Shamima was when she was 15 and she had a point of view or a conscience died. It died when she was 15. She has endured seeing so many different traumatic events, and therefore she said she was very nonchalant when they spoke about the heads that she found in the bin, or you know, it was like, you know, like it's normal. That is not normal. Definitely something happened. If it wasn't her mental health then when she was 15, definitely her mental health now.
Yeah, I'm not trying to derail your point about.
Well, that would be true about maybe now, but
but no, please let's stay on the boat about this New Zealand terrorist. What frustrates me is the fact that, you know, the headlines that are trying to draw on emotional heartstrings of the boy who went traveling and came back.
He travelled to North Korea.
He went to North Korea. And
like that's regular travel.
Like, you know, he
was
part of Facebook groups.
When you come with the dreadlocks, you know, when you come back with the cane roll.
He was part of Facebook groups that really spoke on you know, very pro-white ideologies and views. So let's not try and make him out to be a sweet boy that turned sour.
So I have an open question for you. Do you feel like, because for me, the question I have to keep answering, we do see this and this sort of trope pop up, but particularly in the media, do you guys feel this is some sort of organised distraction?
Yes.
Or do you feel it's just
We're trying to organise
white ignorance?
Are you trying to distract us from what though?
The particular language they use, do you think it's organised distraction?
Yes.
No, it's white ignorance.
Or do you think it's ignorance?
Do you think it's particularly white
ignorance?
ignorance?
White ignorance. I think it's particularly white ignorance. Let me tell you why. I'll tell you something that I saw when I was living in Ashford. I lived in an area that was suburban and there were no black people there. In my first few weeks of living there, the police were phoned several times. They'd come, they'd stop and they'd search me up until I read them the rights to be like, no. Like, I live here. Unless you've actually got due reason or you've actually got, like...
I believe that they remember to this day, knowing you.
They will. You know, you can't think
you know, he probably dressed them down proper.
Suspicion of what, I live here. Do you know what I mean? I live here, so actually, unless you've got more than... You can't say, because, you know, you were seen loitering. I'm not loitering, I live here, so if I'm going for a walk, if I'm walking back from school, I live here, so I'll be seen here. Do you get what I mean? However, I had white friends who... were both, you know, I had those who were just, you know, regular upstanding citizens and, you know, those kind of kids that are troublemakers and stuff like that. And actually what I did get to see while I was living in Ashford, which is actually quite an open place. I thought, living in Essex, I thought I'd find openness, but I found a lot of deep-seated racism that was there. When I lived in Ashford, they were a lot more open and
About their racism.
no, just in general, they were a lot more open and therefore very receptive.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: people in poverty tend to do that a lot easier than middle class areas. Like, you know, the middle class kids that were in Ashford did not receive me as well as you know the breadline families. You know, children from the breadline families. And you know, getting to my point, when police would see the naughtier white kids doing things, you know, they're identifying with themselves.
Sure.
You know, so therefore it's a slap on the wrist, and it's like a, you know, don't do that, and there's no conviction that would follow. And yet, if a person of an ethnic minority would do it, you know, and I'm talking about just a few shades darker than them, Kosovans, a lot of Kosovans live in the sort of Ashford, Maidstone, those, you know, areas. You know, like, they went through the process and the procedures, and it's all due to it's down to the choices of those in leadership. Do you know what I mean? You kind of, it's to the discretion of the police officers what they're going to do. So actually, it's neither it's not wrong to give a warning without actually, you know, putting a child through the processes and making them a criminal.
Yeah.
But I didn't see the same grace handed out to the Kosovans or, you know, young black youths that were committing less crimes. So actually, I think it's purely white ignorance that, you know, they naturally, because they identify with the person, because it is a white person, that they would say their mental health, or that they, you know, talk about, you know, the boy. When we talk about a boy, you're thinking of it connotes a lot of innocence. Do you get what I'm saying? But what I've got to say is that white ignorance is I'm not therefore saying that also you should understand it's not acceptable and it's got to stop. And I'm personally tired. I'm personally tired because it's not every black child that does something wrong that is perfectly fine. They just happen to be animal-like, or that's a savage, or that is a Muslim. There are deeper issues that are there. When we talk about gang culture and we talk about black kids, we're looking at areas that are densely populated with black kids. You know, so if you go into Hackney and you talk about, we're doing searches all over the place. To be honest with you, if you're in East London in general and you're doing searches, you are going to be searching people of colour. That is a fact.
Sure.
We're not talking about Cobham and Surrey.
No, you're right. You're right.
Yeah.
You are right. I think in relation to this, it's really interesting because I think it can be white ignorance and I think it can be something wider. And I think it all depends on what the comparison is. So if we consider, let's say, a white perpetrator against someone who the media frames in ethno-racial terms, then it is a question of white ignorance. But when we branch that out and we look at ethno-religious terms, as this is here, I do think it can be something more. It is a wider agenda in my view. So, because it's almost the case that when we look at something ethno-racially, if we're talking about white against black, there is a level of ignorance there. There is. I'm not saying it's totally ignorance, but there is a level of ignorance. But for example, and it links back to what we were previously talking about, but there's a direct comparison, so that's why I bring it up. Muhammad Mwazi, who was Jihadi John, was described by a person in Prevent, as a nice boy before he became radicalized. And everybody here said, why are you doing that? This guy's a butcher. Do you see what I'm saying? Now, the flip side has happened here. The guy's a white perpetrator, and when the Daily Mirror describes him as angelic...
No, it's the Mail. Daily Mail.
No, the Daily Mirror as well. Yeah, and a few newspaper outlets in Australia also did the same thing, saying this was a sweet boy who used to do, when he was a young man, he used to do free exercise classes for different people and stuff like that. Yeah. So I believe when there's an ethno-racial thing... it might be down to white ignorance. But when that opens up into a religious thing, I do think it's something bigger, and I think that stems from factors which would be veering off into a different topic if we spoke about. Maybe we'll talk about it when this is finished.
Let's remember that we're talking about a white supremacist that was going against a religious group, which in particular are Muslims.
And there is a wider agenda there. Because when the attacks happened in Paris, you saw countless people, Je suis Charlie, Je suis Charlie, Je suis Charlie.
Pray for Paris.
Pray for Paris. Rah, 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 rah. You don't see that comparison on the flip side. And there's an agenda there, and I think that is to...
no, but to be fair, people are actually kind of uniting with the victims.
It's almost like...
Absolutely.
It's gained traction that you can't now.
Yeah, no.
You can't. But the agenda's still there. The agenda's still there.
I think with this particular case, it's a unicorn, really.
Yeah, exactly.
Because for once, it's Muslims that have, faced prejudice, from a white supremacist who's categorically singled them out and come to attack them. This is an individual who is part of groups on Facebook which are clearly part of white supremacists, and he actually supports white supremacy acts that have been done against people of color, people of religious backgrounds. So it's safe to say that yes, definitely the man was sick. He's definitely got mental issues, but also his hate, his xenophobia, his social prejudice was strong enough for him to meticulously write a manifesto that he sent through to several members of the New Zealand government before he carried out his attacks, and then went on and did that. He attacked a group of... Yeah, and he filmed it.
And that's part of the reason why...
The thing is, we really need to understand the true psychology behind this particular individual and the reasons behind why he did what he did.
Sorry, but don't you find this really fascinating now? Because, not to throw a man on the bus, but look how even now he's like the true psychology of this individual, but it wasn't there for Shamima.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? Really interesting. Do you see what I'm saying?
Well, Mandela, but I've got a level of consistency.
I'm not talking...
I've got a level of consistency.
No, you contradicted yourself earlier.
No,
I'm not trying to derail it or even bring it back, but it's just really interesting because that's what the papers have just done.
But here's the thing, to be honest, you've not thrown me under the bus.
Yeah.
With regards to Shamima, I told you my true point of view behind it.
Well, I have though, because Shamima didn't... Where was her live stream? Where was her AK? Where was her manifesto? Look at all the things we actually have in front of you, proof of what this atrocities the man did. And you've already talked about we need to understand the deeper. But Shamimi, you were like, it may be lazy, it may be, I don't want it in my country. You came with one of them ones. But, so I was like, it's fascinating that you said that. That's all I'm enjoying the
It is systematic. It is
systematic. Does anyone see that interesting?
Yeah.
Because he's just done what
he's ready. Look, he's ready. He's loaded.
I'm here.
But I'm not trying to bring it back.
No. It's fine. We obviously moved away from that topic.
Yeah.
But it is all interlinked.
It is very connected.
Yeah.
All forms of terrorism, all forms of social prejudice are connected in the essence that is behind their views. Yeah? So guess what? I can tell you that I want to know this guy's psychology. I want to know on a deeper scale, just what went wrong in general. I'm not going to lie to you. Here's some consistency for you. He is in New Zealand. Yeah? I don't want Shamima here. My family is here. My loved ones are here. No, I told you that it's lazy, but that's where I stand.
No, but what would be really interesting if his parents are British?
Huh?
You imagine if his parents are British who were like, we need to bring it back then.
Keep him there, sir! Keep him there! No. My standpoint will always be that. Keep him there. Guys, it's tough, it's difficult, but it is the honest truth. If I can protect Mansour, that's beside me, right now, he's in reach.
No, I agree with you.
Then I'll do that.
That is good.
Bless you.
I was
Yeah?
just talking about the psychology thing. 'Cause
Yeah, absolutely.
You didn't want to
What
address
we-
Shamima's
absolutely,
psychology.
because
That's what I thought was interesting.
no. That is inaccurate. I did not talk about not wanting to. I said that she needs to be psychoanalyzed. I said that I
After
personally.
some Paul, man.
Hold on. Moses.
We got it recorded.
Yeah, that's fine. We can go back to the recording. I'm not backtracking my statement. I said that it was lazy. I said that it was, but I said that personally.
Yeah.
But I think that the government should put someone through the processes that are correct. It doesn't matter what I think. Actually, what I think is just my opinion. But on a wider platform, what does it say when the judiciary system says, actually, we're changing what we've said, and we're not going to do what we said would normally do. We're not putting in place the procedures that we said would normally do, right? Make someone stateless when you say that you can't make someone stateless. Do all the things that go be exactly what we said. Now, in the future, when people's parents commit a crime, the whole family is now going to be deported back to countries that they've never been to.
Yep.
And that's the reason why I think actually on a wider platform, it's important for people to be put through the judicial procedures that have been put in place. And actually seeking loopholes and trying to override it is actually going to create a bigger problem for us. And I'm saying us, we are all in this room, ethnic minorities. It's going to cause a bigger problem for us, if not directly, but definitely to our communities. That's a fact. I can talk about this man's psychology because number one, it's at a distance from me. It is at a distance from me. That's the honest truth. That is the honest truth. That is the honest truth. I did not once say that Shamima Begum did not deserve to be psychoanalyzed.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
So what is your
My
point?
point was, what was really interesting in the context of what we're talking about, how the Daily Mail is using this emotive language to sort of talk about this lone wolf that went back and something happened. Your exact word was like, we need to understand the psychology behind a person like this. That's what you said about my man. So what I found interesting was when I brought that up earlier about Shamima, you were like, I know it's lazy. This is just my opinion. So you went from we with this guy, white man, to my. Oh, sorry, from my to we. That's all I was drawing.
Hold on.
Well, I'll be
I'm
more
not saying
consistent.
you didn't.
I'll be more consistent.
No, hold on.
I'm not saying no.
I'm sorry.
You know,
To
to defend you,
when you keep talking about you've got more consistent.
to defend you.
My view is consistent.
No.
I'm only saying that
I have stayed firm with.
No,
I'm not saying
whether
you're
it's right
inconsistent.
or wrong or whatever. It's my opinion. It belongs to me.
You guys can listen back if you need to check.
Yeah,
I'm not saying you're inconsistent.
I have stayed consistent.
No, I'm not saying you haven't.
I'm talking about under the bus gang.
No,
guys.
no.
Your consistency to address him.
You have in several occasions gone, you're interjecting and going, because I'm coming from a more consistent view. My friend.
I'm only doing that.
Don't throw mad and try and pretend like you're not.
I'm only doing that.
Don't throw mad and pretend like you're not.
So to your defense, you did. I'm not saying you completely rejected her psychology. All I was saying was really interesting, which I'm trying to link like I would do an English essay. Is how quick? No, but it's how quickly you were ready to address. Am I lying, guys? Was it a lot quicker? The psychology behind this New Zealand guy than Shamima.
Well, you know what? We have.
That's all I was sort of drawing the parallels.
We have different opinions.
We're all here.
But I think
But I wasn't trying to derail the conversation.
we have different opinions. So in some sense,
we would
it can
do,
seem
and the
so
thing is-
coherent in his head, and it probably is. I think it's coherent what he's
Yeah, he's not
actually saying.
incoherent. No.
You're making him sound like he's like rambling like a man.
No. And I'm trying to get him looking at me as if I've done something wrong. No, I'm backing you up. I'm bigging you up because I do believe there's some truth in what you say.
I stand by my words.
I do believe there's some
stand by
truth.
my words. And you know what? If there is some level of intelligence in this room and greater sense of understanding on a deeper level about what we're talking about, and you can educate me further and encourage me in a way that I can actually change my standpoints, I'm also willing and I'm open enough about that. My heart is open.
Of course you are.
I'm just sharing my views that belong to me. They are mine.
And the
and I've made it very clear. And the thing is, it is the truth. When things are more at a distance, I think we've got so much more grace for it. For me, I've said this, like for a lot of things that are to do with where I am, what's in close proximity to me, it's lazy, yes, but actually I'll do whatever it takes to protect what's closest to me the quickest way.
It's human.
It is human. It's human nature, and that's very consistent. So, no, in a way, I'm glad that you've identified that and you've pointed that out and called it out. And no, you haven't thrown me under the bus because it is real. It is what it is.
You know, you have to, in my view, you have to look at this thing from a global context. So the term Islamophobia is used so often. And I believe that the discrepancy in terms of how this New Zealand guy is framed in comparison, for example, to someone like Muhammad Mwazi, it is related to a level of Islamophobia. Not a fear of Islam, but a prejudice towards Islam. The fact is that every nation in the world needs an other. It needs an other. That other...
reading stuff about that, actually.
Yeah. You should read Ben Anderson's Imagined Communities.
You should read The Tribe by Ben Colby.
Yeah. Well, we can share these details. Yeah. These two men, they're pouring right over my mic. So every nation needs an other.
Yeah.
That other, for example, we see about tribal others in certain parts of Africa, for example, we have historically. We've seen about racial others. We've seen about religious others. The flavor of the moment at the moment for the other is the Muslim. Yeah. The flavor. That's not the only other that exists in the world. Yeah. But
it's the boy.
It's funny you say that though. It's funny you say that because that book I was reading about, they were saying about there's favourable groups and unfavourable groups. Basically, there's favoured and unfavoured.
There's even favoured.
What's weird is actually they're saying the favoured groups are actually the minorities, and where the unfavoured is like the white straight male, basically, like the white straight middle class male is the unfavoured, and the argument behind that.
Unfavoured.
Yeah, see, that's the thing.
Pardon?
If you,
yeah, we're talking about your consistency.
No, if you hear what I'm saying, is in terms of he means it in the sense that it's basically who is protected in the media in a way. So the favoured groups are the minorities.
I've heard of this
gay and lesbian groups, and that it's where it's like they are the protected groups, whereas
it's protected groups.
It's essentially
So the middle.
It's bull. Okay,
so let's just make it very clear.
Yeah, but I need to finish this.
In the middle. Finish your point.
I need to finish this. On a global scale, we often talk about the other as West v East. So when we, for example, talk about terrorists, East is terrorist, West is fresh-faced liberal who's scared of terrorism. Actually, the reality is different. So there was one of the most famous pieces was by an academic called Sam Huntington. And he spoke about the clash of civilizations. And he split the world up into different compartments and essentially said that you have a Western bloc, an Eastern bloc, you have certain lone countries, you have the Asian bloc, and you have the wider Islamic world. He said the bloody borders would be on the Islamic world v. the West, because the West was characterized by a religion which was teleological, missionary, and further characteristics, and that this was the same as Islam. So there would be a zero-sum game, where it was a winner takes all, and that's why that would be the bloodiest conflict. I actually say to you that the level of Islamophobia is global. It's not Western v Eastern. Yeah? That's how bad the othering of Muslims has got. So in Burma, you see the Rohingya Muslims, they're in one of the largest refugee camps in the world. From Buddhists who see ethnic Bangladeshis who are Muslims as an other. And they've cast them out. And they're one of the largest refugee things in the world. In the Central African Republic, there's a big ethno-religious divide between Christians and Muslims. If you look at Australia, most of the refugees, and this is poignant because it comes from, we're talking about an Australian here, most of the refugees are from Muslim countries, and they're all sent to Christmas Island, and they're deprived of actually coming onto mainland Australia. So Islamophobia is global. It's not just Western v Muslim. It's even happening in the Eastern Hemisphere, for want of a better word. In Israel, you have the Muslims. They're not even allowed necessarily to pray in the Al-Aqsa Mosque unless it's at certain times. So you get the point. So the othering of the Muslim is actually on a global level, and it's even extended into those regions where there are Muslim countries. So the level that is systematic in this case, it's so high that it's systematic because it exists all over the globe. The reason why there's sympathy for this case is because, as Mandela said, it's a unicorn. We have a recording of it taking place, and almost Nobody can dispute it. But some of the people with the loudest voices are actually the ones who stir the pot.
Is it a unicorn though?
I believe
I
in
don't
some
think
sense
it's
it
a
is.
unicorn.
He's
No, it
right.
absolutely is.
Why do you think it's a unicorn?
Because for once, we're not. It's not the hand being raised against Muslims. So actually,
Sorry. Okay,
yeah.
yeah.
So
No, I get that. Yeah,
actually, we are able to humanize Muslims. We can make them our brothers and sisters truly,
Yeah.
right? But also to the fact that there was a camera rolling on
That's the big one.
someone who is committing such heinous crimes. You know, we usually have wording, like, you know, journalists who talk about things that have happened, and it's easily spun as to how it's. You cannot spin this. You can't spin this. Like, you have, you know, the man has a manifesto.
Of course.
You cannot spin this. And
that's-
this is why I've regarded it as a unicorn.
And I agree with you, and that's why even the ones who stir the pot the most, they're the ones with the loudest voices saying, "I offer my condolences. We respect this." They can't hide away from the traction in this particular
the same
case.
people who perpetuate sentiments that go against Muslims in general. For once, they've turned around and they're the ones who are saying our condolences. They're saying this shouldn't have happened. They're saying that this is something that is terrible or whatever. But
tomorrow they'll revert
But
back.
tomorrow they go back to business as usual.
Of course. And
You
I
know?
agree.
And that probably includes Muslims being viewed to be a negative group, to be criminals, to be terrorists, and yet that's not what Muslims are. That's just what certain groups who call themselves Muslims are. Also, the word that we use as, you know, terrorism, you know, is regarded as heroism in other places, you know?
Yeah.
And this is what this great British soil is good at, you know? So, for example, if we look at, you know, just to divert just a little bit, if we look at Margaret Thatcher's son, he attempted to stage a coup
Yeah.
in Equatorial Guinea. Is that not terrorism?
Of course it is.
It's terrorism.
Of course it is.
It's
Yeah.
terrorism. But actually, when you look at the way that it's written, you know, his people were actually mercenaries they were actually arrested in Zimbabwe before they could actually carry out their task. But it is an act of terrorism.
Of course it is. Definitely. And
You know?
I mean,
but in many senses, that it wouldn't be seen as that. Actually, this man has not been tried for any of that, and today holds a baronetcy. You know, when his father passed away, he is now known as Sir Mark Thatcher. Do you get what I mean?
I just think, literally, because I want to sum this up as well. I just think terror is terror. It just full stop.
Yeah.
There's nothing towards other than that. Stop framing it as something else.
I haven't really got much
It's
to say
simple
on
as
this one, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's
Terror is
you're a
terror.
terrorist, lock him up.
He's a terrorist. Yeah.
I tell you what I do find. Sorry. Do they always in that? I mean, I'm saying always like this happens, but he went to court the very same day. Does that always happen? That's what I thought was really strange.
I'm confused.
right?
I'm confused about the incident. After he did what he did,
He went to
was it
court.
not a shoot on sight kind of thing?
No, he's still
No.
alive.
He was around for about 3 hours.
Did they pin him down, or did
Yes,
he
they
just?
did.
Oh yeah, I don't know about
Yes,
that.
they did.
No, or did he just kind of like
No.
hands up?
They had to pin him
Like
down.
what happened?
He was arrested, wasn't he, over a car or something?
But he wasn't shooting the police though. He was.
Nah.
That's what I'm saying. How did they
think
stop the massacre?
So here's the thing: there were two
were
Muslim
two sites, weren't there?
Yeah, it was 2 sites. When he got to the second site, his magazine had actually run out of bullets.
So he was
and-
reloading or whatever.
No, he wasn't reloading, or
Okay.
he could have potentially been trying to reload, but actually 2 Muslim men actually held him at first before the police.
Oh, before they
then
came and
captured him.
took him away.
Yeah.
I thought it wasn't a situation where the police could have got there and just like shot on sight. There's a maniac running through, killing people.
It could have been. It could have been.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
It could have ended up like that.
Those New
But,
Zealand man,
you know-
they're not like that though.
Yeah.
They're not like that. They're not hardened.
No natural predators on the island.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? They don't really have that, so
Until now.
it's completely alien. Yeah, up until now.
Yeah, terror is terror, man.
But I just thought it was odd. He went court that same
It is.
day.
It is a bit odd that.
But-
Yeah.
Yeah,
But fair play. due process, do it quickly, innit?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the thing is,
I mean,
the Prime
it's not
Minister,
exactly
no,
like
and
they
the
have
thing
to.
is,
The case.
the Prime
That's
Minister,
what I'm saying. Yeah.
the Prime Minister of New Zealand said that whether they're refugees or whether they're people who emigrated into New Zealand, you know, that are practicing Islam, they are brothers and sisters and members of the community, and you know, civilians who did not deserve to go through that. She came, paid her respects, she covered her hair, you know, to show that she is open and receptive to our Muslim brothers and sisters, you know, living in harmony with the indigenous to New Zealand or the inhabitants of New Zealand, you know, which is a positive thing.
Yeah, it's refreshing.
It is. And I wish we could be like that a lot more on a global sphere.
We should.
But it doesn't change the fact that you still had, you know, senators that are around the corner that were legitimate, like making his actions legitimate.
That man got egged though.
I watched the clip.
That was good.
And they had to come and wait. Yeah. And he
See how
came
they
for the
choked my man?
and he came for the other one. Yeah. That was funny.
Ah, dear.
Yeah.
Terrorist.
Terrorist.
I just want to say one more topic then before we leave. You could talk about knife crime.
So knife crime.
Yeah, let's talk about knife crime.
Well,
I was in Croydon the other day, and
I was going to say about knife crime is like, do you think people are saying that music is a reason for all of this as well?
so there's a lot of emphasis on drill music and it being the reason behind a lot of the shootings and stabbings and, you know, a lot of the crimes that are going on. So
I don't think music should be censored. I don't think it's something
music
that we
is
should
a
start
form
censoring.
of music is a form of art. That is a fact. If we blame music alone for some of the things that are happening, then that is truly lazy.
Very lazy.
Yeah. However, I'm not going to ignore the fact that, you know, I want to look at, you know, when the lootings happened, did you see what was happening? It was the media coverage that was happening with the looting that was actually part of, that it aided, you know, the next place sort of getting riled up and doing it. You know, you had the news going, we've heard that it should be happening in Lewisham next. And then what the next?
That should be happening.
You know, it should be. We heard that it's moving towards Lewisham.
I heard Foot Locker is open right now.
Listen, all of a sudden, yeah, Lewisham has stood up and it's happened. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that while music can really encourage a certain point of view, it doesn't mean that it's the reason behind it happening. We need to look at the socio-economic situation that is there. We have to look at, once again, I'm sorry, you know, ethnic minorities don't really have a lot of people in power, you know, who represent them. But a lot of musicians that are excelling in what they do. Moses is a young black man and he's excelling in what he does.
Shout out a man like Moses.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yes. Whoop, whoop. Do you know what I mean? But the thing is, you know, this is an arena where Moses has got every right to rise up and become something, and that is poor. That is truly poor. We cannot just have our black men, you know, having absolute rights to climbing the ladder in music and being able to do whatever they want to do. Myself, I've got every right to climb up in my industry and you know, run the top places and cook for the highest people, and there's nothing wrong with that. Do you know what I mean? Hey, listen, I'm not here to talk about what you prescribe to. I'm here to feed you and collect money. But this is a real thing. So actually, a lot of these youth are looking to music as a form of expression, and actually are not seeing it as just an art. So 50 Cent, for example, you know, he writes power, and you know, there's lots of shootings and all kinds of things that are happening, but it doesn't mean that he's traveling around with a gun and shooting people himself. That's not a real thing. And the problem that's there is, you know, taking and breaking down the art and treating it as something that is absolutely.
But wasn't 50 Cent like Get Rich Die Trying? The
That's
classic
exactly-
50.
that's
Wasn't
exactly
that
what
his
it
life
was.
previously?
Yeah,
He was about that life at one
Isn't that why
point.
people respected it? For instance, like,
But
say
then
if he was
here's the
never
thing.
part of that.
But then here's the thing. Here's the thing. If we look at Biggie Smalls, he's dead, and actually, proof is he did not grow up in the slums. His parents were well to do with, but actually,
But still, then he was involved with the culture.
But then no. But here's the thing: he perpetuated a culture that he truly did not come from, and this is the issue that I've got. A lot of children talking about, like in a lot of this drill music, they're talking about crimes that have happened. So my sister-in-law actually works with young offenders and part of the young offender teams, and a lot of the psychologists and a lot of the social workers that are working with some of the artists who are actually, you know, putting out music. Some of them are actual clients to like, and in the system. And then some of the other artists are just artists that are writing for writing's sake. They've never held a knife like that. They're not about that life.
But that life is something. But when they are,
the thing is, the music is glamorizing it, and actually there is a level. It's actually gross. There is a gross level of and large amount of young people that are invigorated and encouraged by this music and actually take it as literal.
Yeah, but if they're encouraged by that, that's why they're saying we should stop making that music. That's why. Do you think it's something that we should stop then, or do you think that these people should take ownership?
No, because that's not the answer.
Yeah.
That's not the answer. As I said, our black kids can look up to, you know, young stars or hood celebrities, people who've got prominence and who are part of a culture that is a monoculture. It is a sorry shame to think that, you know, when you think black culture, you think of hoodies, knives, rap music, and that's not a reality. We have got
Entrepreneurs.
But the
We've
problem
got
is, the
doctors,
rap
we've
music
got
shouldn't be counted as a
lawyers.
negative. I don't think that should be counted as a
It
negative.
shouldn't be counted.
It's not
as
a negative,
Yeah,
really,
I
in
don't
and of
think
itself.
It's not a negative at all. But what I'm saying is, it should not be the only arena or one of the main arenas where people of color are being given the highest praise.
Agreed.
Because actually, what we're doing is having kids that potentially are ambitious, who potentially can be great engineers, doctors, lawyers, or whatever else, who are going, well, actually, if I want to be successful, the only people who represent me, who are immediately successful, are XYZ, and they happen to be artists who are in this field. It is an unfair disadvantage towards those individuals. So actually stopping the music doesn't mean it's going to stop the crimes, even though it may encourage it a bit more. Stopping it isn't going to stop it.
I agree. I think one of the big questions here we have to ask is, are types of music such as drill innately violent? And by that I mean, if you listen to it, it causes you to then go and be violent. Like, it clearly it clearly doesn't. I don't think it does. It's not a case of cause. It's more a case of correlation.
How many of us listen to different genres of music? We do not act out or live out half of the things that we listen to.
And remember, temporal context is important. So back in the day, you would have seen certain artists and they would have been spoken about in much the same way as drill artists today. Do you see what I'm saying? I'm talking about your old school type of rap, you know? So it's not something innate, it's not something causal, so I don't think it should be censored. And I think the add-on to that, which if I'm expressing it, I'd only be repeating it, is what you said. And I agree with that entirely. I think that there is a wider thing here that is, black people are only given, not only, but mostly given the highest accolade in performative circles, if performative is a word. And I think that they're so much more talented than just performance. They're talented performers, but they are the talent does not end there. Do you see what I'm saying? So I agree with that bit as well.
So if we also go to think about some of like, guys, this could end up being a long conversation. If we look at education, yeah, like a lot of kids that are living in impoverished areas and that are failing and that are acting up and whatever do tend to be minorities. Do you know what I mean? Depending on the area that you're in. And then you have to think about the opportunities that are there for them. Do you get what I mean? So actually, they might be children that are almost, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. kids that
Definitely.
are almost not going to get the greatest out of education, out of the education system. So actually, when they think about immediate gratification, they're thinking about, you know, they're being almost led into gang culture, gun culture, drug culture. Do you get what I mean? And actually, when it's perpetuated in the music, then it makes it different, because we are all educated black men who are around this table who have got influence in our own circles and stuff like that. So actually, even though we can identify with some of these kids just by colour, our experiences are completely different. So actually, when you and I listen to music, we're not necessarily going to be like, okay, I'm going to act out what I've heard in this music.
Yeah.
But then actually, when you're talking about people who have less opportunities and who are in, you know, when they listen to the music, these are the surroundings that they're around. When they look around, they are part of, you know, they can identify with what's in the music. They glamorize what's happening in it. They're probably part of a self-fulfilling prophecy, and actually part of what's being said in the music is part of the lives that they're already living. Then actually now you're making a correlation with what's happening in the music and what's happening in the areas and the things that are being acted out, and the crime tally is rising. So actually, it's not the music. There's a bigger picture.
It's one ingredient in a big pot.
Yeah.
But it's not the ingredient.
So actually, censoring it is not going to stop those crimes from happening. No. So what you'll find is, okay, you stop drill music today, you're still going to have those crimes happening, those kids that are part of those groups that is still happening. So actually, what you need to ask yourself is, why are these kids, you know, here? Why are they part of these groups?
Do you think... And I really want to hear Moses, because Moses is quite quiet. Yeah,
No,
but
he's
to sort of ask the same question, but sort of different. Do you think that drill is identified in this way? Is it part of like a white naivety? Because I don't really hear black people saying we need to censor drill. Do you think it is a white naivety that says, "Oh well"?
Oh, for goodness sake! Of course it is.
To a degree, yeah.
But it's not necessarily entirely.
Not understanding.
Not totally.
The music,
not totally.
But so in what sense? Because I'm asking.
I think black people, on general, I'm speaking generally are a lot more musically understanding of. You're talking about drill. Drill is like a sort of modern. It's a newer step in the continuum of black music.
Yeah.
So it's like, for me to talk to my mum about drill, she's like, well, listen.
For real, yeah.
I've lived through dancehall, I've lived through bashment, I've lived through rap,
Right.
I've lived through gangster rap.
Yeah.
Doesn't sound that much new to when flipping, I don't know, a Big L
And in
was
a way,
talking, writing songs about shooting police. I'm
Mm.
like, okay. But yeah, so I think there is a degree of that. I don't even call it, I think there's a bigger just agenda behind it, because this happens every so often. Do you get me? They'll said it about rock and roll, they've said it about rap.
They've said it about games and
They've said it about everything. So it's like, I don't even know if I can completely call it white naivety. It's just,
So what is it?
I think,
Because I
I
don't
think
know.
it's a generational fear and a generational
I don't even think that's it. I think it's the easy target to pass off the responsibility, to pass the blame. Because, like you said, I think music is influential, but I don't think it's that influential. I think music would be like the cherry on top. Do you get me? For someone to go and commit these crimes.
So sort of like what I was talking about in the first conversation about the cherry on top.
We ain't going back to that, man.
No, we're not going back to that. But
Yeah,
I'm
but
just saying,
you know,
it's the same level of human thinking.
Yeah.
That there's a simplicity, and then you just add that bit
Just a little bit.
because it's the easy thing to point at and look at.
Yeah.
Whereas back before it was something to do with sexuality. Now we're
Yeah.
talking about wider socioeconomic issues.
Exactly. Because I will go back to the debate we had before the mics were on, where you were talking about Beyonce and you went to see the silence. You know, and how you're not a huge fan, but the music moved you in such a way. You were in the... So music
You
is
in the zone.
influential.
Man
You
was
can't
struck.
sit here
Like
and...
you went all the way up north.
Just like,
Yeah.
From north
No,
from
guys,
south
he
to,
didn't. He went to see his cousin. Let me not slander him on the podcast.
he went from south to north
But, you know,
to be
Look, he's
great
totally
liar.
down that now.
but my point is, it's like, I would not sit here and say music is not influential, because that's not true. You could look at someone like Tekashi sitting at 6ix9ine, who's sitting in prison right now because of what he glamorized over people like Soldier or 50 Cent, and try to follow that trope, which might not have been true or a reality for the majority of people, but he went for it, and look where it ended up. So it's like, to say it's not influential, if you go to America now and you see how, or not even just America, look at the world, look at how hip-hop culture has influenced world culture. You can't say it's not influential. But I don't think it's the only thing, and I don't even think it's the most important thing.
Agreed.
And further to that, I also wouldn't want to live in a world where it's censored and I don't have the full picture. I don't want to hear a Katy Perry write a beautiful song about her day out, and I don't hear some Grease on the other end. I want to hear everything. You know what I mean? Because it's like, I don't think that's fair. If you then get into this censorship argument, well, whose standards? You know what I mean? We could, whether we get into the R. Kelly or the MJ thing, that's another debate.
Come on, actually, that's
no.
Actually, I would love to talk about that. You know,
how much time do we have?
An hour and a half, and I ain't got time to edit all that, bro. No. I have not got time to edit all that. You can come back for another episode.
Well, I tell you what.
Put a pin in that.
You can come back for another episode.
Yeah, you can just stop it and start.
That could be an entire.
I think we could cover that without any other topic.
My ultimate point is, I'm not one for censorship because I feel like drill, grime, gangster rap, whatever, for me is the last step in the chain of whether you want to call them problems or circumstances. I think people don't just get up in the morning and like, I'm going to make this music to be quote unquote problematic. There's so many socio-economic issues that someone has to go through to even arrive at being able to make a drill song. So I think like to use that as the sort of poster boy to attach knife grab to is intellectually irresponsible, but really, and reductive. Yeah, definitely, because we've been here. It gets me annoyed with history because the one thing we don't learn about history is that we just keep repeating it. Do you get me? We just keep repeating history. Why
it's a continuum.
It just keeps going. I'm like, well, we can't actually break this cycle, guys. We've seen this happen so many times. So I think, that's my opinion.
There's a suggestion that was there that Fortnite was causing crime.
I'd sooner believe that than drill. Honestly.
Do you think it's because of is there a difference between gaming
can I
and
just say
music?
about the Fortnite though? Some kid apparently like headbutted his mum. She tried to turn off his Fortnite.
Yeah, I'd sooner believe that.
I'm thinking, imagine you trying to headbutt your mum if she turned off your console. Well, how would that go for you?
I would not be here today.
How would that go for you?
Listen.
The fact that you tried to crack your mum in the face.
How old was this kid? Sorry, how old was this kid?
He was 14. Your mum turned off your console and you headbutt her. Just think about that. Just think about that for a second. The fact that he's alive to write that article. My man's crying. You know what, I think that's where we're going to sign. I think that's where we're going to leave the episode.
We have to leave it. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
But I'm just saying that's mad. Yeah, no censoring,
Mad.
But
Censorship doesn't help anyone. Actually,
you got one more thing to say because we're rapping.
Yeah, it inhibits people, and hold on, he headbutted his mom.
Yeah. Cracked her in the face. Cracked her in the face.
No. Okay.
Yeah, you go on, wrap up.
There are bigger issues in that household. Very clear. Honestly, these things are part and parcel. They can add to some of the issues that are there. But I don't think that it's the mother of the problem. Music is not the mother of the problem, and neither is video games. And actually, I think today we have actually been able to establish the majority of the issues that we're talking about are socio-economic.
Yeah, for sure. That's a good way to sum it up.
Yeah, that is the last point that I can actually hit on. It's all socio-economic, and until we start digging deeper into some of those things, some of the things that we blame it on, like Moses said, it's counterproductive, and intellectually, it's so flawed.
Alright, cool. That's another. Well, this guy is dying now. But that's another. He couldn't be serious at the end of the show. So that's another episode of Chatting and Saltfish. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at Chatting and Saltfish, and you know where to listen to us on SoundCloud, iTunes, and YouTube. It's Chatting and Saltfish everywhere. Until next time, peace.
Bye, guys.
Oh man.